Good morning and welcome to this REC webinar on sustaining business performance during COVID-19. My name is Richard Charnock and I hope you can all hear us clearly. Please can you let us know using the text box for questions on the right hand side of your screen. Thank you. I've had a number come through to say that they can hear us, so that's great news. We've extended the webinar slightly today, so we may be due to finish just slightly after 11 o'clock. If you wish to ask a question, please use the text box that you've just used and we'll try to answer them all. If we can't, we'll ensure that they're covered in the follow-up email and the slides with the poll questions, which will either come out this afternoon or early tomorrow. This week's COVID-19 webinar is all about finding new ways of working to support your and your team's physical and mental well-being, and how to sustain your productivity and business performance during this crisis. But mental health and well-being isn't the only major concern for recruitment business leaders now. With teams working remotely, cyber criminals are at an advantage. Our business partner and secure messaging provider, Beyond Encryption, has also joined us to share some best practice guidance on protecting your business from cyber crimes during these sensitive times. With me today is Dave Pye and Bradley Platt from Augment, and Augment are business consultants and strategic advisors to the recruitment industry. Brad and Dave work in a non-exec advisory capacity with their clients, both in the UK and abroad. Dave is well known as an MD and CEO within the industry and is presently a non-exec director of both recruitment and technology businesses. Bradley has been in the industry for over 25 years as a recruiter, business director and non-exec director. Bradley is better known to you all as the founder of Broadbean. Also joining us today is Paul Jacobs and Howard Greenwood from Love Work Life. Their consultancy provides ethical support to help drive both business and personal growth. Paul has spent over 40 years in the recruitment industry and is the former managing director of Office Angels. Howard has spent over 25 years in the industry and has a proven track record of managing businesses, increasing both their revenues and profitability. And we're also joined by Adrian Tries from Beyond Encryption, an REC partner. With extensive corporate and SME experience in leading successful global sales, engineering and manufacturing teams, Adrian leads the development and business functions within Beyond Encryption. So it's to Adrian that I will turn to our first question, which is, whilst everyone has quickly adapted to the new home working environment, what should leaders be focusing on and doing to keep their business resilient and manage the new vulnerabilities and cyber crime?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the invite to be here. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. Yeah, I mean this is a really interesting question, because I think the first bit of learning, and perhaps not to the question itself, is it's taught us all a lesson about business continuity planning. None of us saw that coming, and we know many big companies that are still struggling to adapt their call centers and their teams to home working. They didn't have the tech in place, so they put themselves under very much, additional pressure that they needn't have done had they thought about things perhaps a little more in advance. But broadly, I think this question comes down to really, there's two facets to it. There's the human piece and the systems piece, and the enormous trust that we should be placing in those wonderful assets to our business, our people. If we've got the right tools and people in place, the rest should, be easier, I think. But the backdrop to this, in my mind, is that in these dreadful and challenging circumstances, organised crime will proliferate around the COVID-19 thing, or the COVID-19 issue, sorry. The City of London Police, for instance, are talking about a 400% increase in scams relating to COVID-19. There was FBI guidance forecasting a significant increase around business email compromise, where at one end or the other, your email, your comms are compromised by a party, and that will generally be to gather information, be it bank accounts or identity. Most of those things occur around actually impersonation and identifying somebody for financial gain. Unfortunately, email is the #1 target for that because it's the de facto method of communication for all of us. But probably just before we jump into that, I think, if we talk about the human processes first, because we do all have these great people and these wonderful innovators in our businesses, it's actually giving those people time to do what they need to do, to check their emails, check their communications, make sure they're corresponding. And the first line of defense is recognizing, really, if you see an inbound communication that's got an unusual urgency, or there's a massive change in a bank account or a request for an unusual payment, just check that it's come from a known email address, and that you identify the person on the end of that communication. Time, I think, is key to making sure, or allowing people time is key to making sure that you're not falling into the traps. Certainly, as a business, I know we have offset the inefficiency of probably not being collectively joined in our office by all being at our desks earlier and on Zooms and Teams meetings. And that just puts you under significantly more pressure. So it really is about just making sure your processes are secure. Now, there's probably never better time to make sure you're not reusing passwords. The level of password protection we've seen and research we've seen is scary, where people use password 1 month, password 2 the next month, password 3 the following month. There are lots of examples of that. So make sure you're secure around those things, and that your teams are as well. And then I think there's the systems piece, and that comes down to, in my mind, there's your own security and there's the security of your recipient. For many of the more scaled organizations, their network security is probably okay whether they're working from home, remotely, or in the office. For our smaller customers and people we know, it may be they're using less secure forms of email. And that means that probably some of the basic tools of just encrypting files with passwords aren't enough, because they're all really easily compromisable. So I think my thoughts are, encryption alone is not enough. It's as much about identity and verifying the identity of your recipient, and making sure that you've communicated to the person that you wish to communicate to. You've not misaddressed it. And that's probably, in many respects, where our system comes in. We are extending an offer to the REC members as a new partner, particularly in these difficult times, to use our system for free for a couple of months, and that will come out in the guidance note and is available notes afterwards. And it is also available on the REC website, along with some of the help list around checking domain names, public email domains, all of those sorts of things. But make sure you're identifying your recipient when you're communicating with them, that you're using all your usual channels. Watch out for things that are unusual, and just make sure that you're not making it easy for people. So there's some thoughts.
And thank you very much, Adrian. I think just to reiterate for those listening, have you just said that you're going to give a free service to REC members for the next couple of months?
That's right. Yeah, there's a 2-month free trial with a voucher code which you can reach through our website, and it's also listed on the REC. The links are on the REC site. It's for REC members. It's 2 months. It allows you to use it for your business up to sort of 25 users. If you need more than that, please contact us or contact the REC. And that system allows you to encrypt your emails based on the identity of your recipient. really easily with two-factor authentication or passwords. You can add those people to what we term your secure community so that you can communicate really easily with them in the future. It's fully integrated with Outlook if you're a PC Outlook user. And we support really pretty much everybody from huge corporates in the financial services world right down to the little sole traders and consumers. So apologies for the unabashed promotion piece there, but we do see some horrors out there of communication and compromise, where people have been impersonated, and you get that email into the finance team that says, please transfer £100,000 urgently to this account because supply chain is going to stop if you don't. And people do, and they do their very best, and they end up compromised, and suddenly you paid a bunch of money to somebody else because your email has been compromised. So they're the things that, you know, really are going to be a proliferate through, I think, this period.
Thanks, Adrian. Now, that kind of email going to finance, is that a phishing email or is that a whaling email? Because that's a new term I heard recently.
Yeah. I mean, it can be a bit of both. I mean, broadly, they are all impersonation attacks. Phishing is generally about getting you to click a link or gather data from an email, or get you to enter a password into a false website. Whaling is a very much more targeted attack, a la what you've just described or we've just described. And that's when your processes really do take precedence. You must protect your electronic comms and your digital comms and think about those. But that's the balance of people processes, not just changing a bank account because you had an invoice in saying we've changed our bank account details. That they are the absolute opportunities for people to defraud you. As I say, I've seen some of the biggest organisations in the world fall victim to that, and that can be both ways. So it's not just about what people are doing to you. If you are not securely transmitting your details to your partners and your customers and your clients, somebody could be impersonating you and then taking your payment by changing your invoice and putting their bank details on the bottom of it, and taking essentially what would have been the payment. And it's a very grey area then as to who's at fault, you know, who's paid, who hasn't paid, and it's a place, you know, people really don't want to go.
Yeah, it sounds like a minefield, but if I summarize the advice, it's about take stock of what's been asked, take a chance to think it through, follow the processes that you've always had and that you know work, and anything that's a surprise, be incredibly suspicious.
Yeah, I think very true. And I think, you know, as I say, the last bit is making sure that your systems and your communications are up to spec, and particularly that you're verifying on those important communications that contain sensitive data. And, you know, I don't like using the word GDPR too much because we're all bored of it, but it's absolutely critical that, you know, personal information is secured and it's sent to the right person, because the ICO are looking very, very closely at that, particularly in the financial services industry, where we're, you know, is, if you like, our stalwart market at the current time. They are bringing, you know, significant legislation and fines in where companies fail to maintain those basic protections. So it is not just about, you know, if I say fraud, it's also about business risk and compliance.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Adrian. There's some really practical takeaways there for everybody, and I can see one or two of the questions that have come in so far you've already answered, so that's great. So what I'd like to do now is, if you could stay on the webinar, please, Adrian, but I would like to move on to our next topic, if I may, because I hope everybody out there that's listening in well, but we're all going through this initial phase of lockdown, and now we're looking to see what else we can be doing to manage the business, and what adjustments should we be making to manage ourselves and our senior team over the next few weeks. So for this this topic. Can I turn to Dave first, please? Dave Pye.
Yeah, thank you. Morning, everybody. Thanks, Adrian, as well. That was really helpful. I guess one of the things we've been saying, this is the third of the webinars that we've done, that we're dealing in a time of disruption. We're dealing with a virus that kind of doesn't come with a script. There's no playbook for this. So we're all kind of learning to go through it as it happens. And I'm speaking to those of you who lead organizations, who have leaders who have got staff working for them. And there's no better time, whether we like it or not, that we don't want to be in this situation, but we are. And there's no better time to observe the quality of leaders than when there are challenges rocking their world. And there is no big challenge that we face now. There's no template, and our job as leaders is to help them step up. And normally there's an innate reaction from leaders to pull back. But great leaders are the ones that push forward. And that's difficult to do in a time of uncertainty. It's difficult to do if you've got rolling news on and it's all very, very bleak. But the best leaders are the ones that are doing everything that they can to connect within the organization and to ensure that they are on top of their game. And also, the best leaders are the ones that connect within their industry. So if I can encourage you as leaders out there listening to this webinar to connect with other leaders who are doing the same things as you are, that way you'll learn. You can do things like webinars like this and the COVID-19 hub that the RST puts out, but just make sure you're speaking to other leaders. Your job as a leader of leaders is to help them to adapt, to help them to navigate their way through the change that's to come. So don't forget that you set up your business with a purpose. Remind them of the purpose of that business, because the purpose won't change, even though the disruption has been with us for a few weeks and maybe with us for a month or two more, if not longer. Purpose matters, because for you as leaders, purpose helps you move from survive to thrive. And even though it's difficult and maybe you've had to furlough some staff or let some staff go, it's about you as a leader showing the resilience to help them thrive. So help your leaders to see when they need to push rather than when they need to pause. I think it's really important in this time as a leader of other leaders to maintain a sense of humour, because essentially this is a very serious time because we're about protecting our business, but you want to inject a bit of humour. One of the leaders that I'm working with, every day they have their sprint calls at 9 o'clock, at 12:30 and at 5 o'clock. And every time they have a call, they put something different behind them on the bookshelf that you can see. And it's a small thing. They put a plant, they'll put a garden gnome, they'll put a piece of exercise equipment, they'll put a picture of a pop star. It's a very small thing, and you may think, well, it doesn't really matter. But actually, as a leader, it just helps you to connect better with the leaders that you've got. I would also make sure that you are being empathetic as a leader. Acknowledge the stress that your people are under, because that helps to build the trust. Recognize that some of your leaders will be struggling. And of course, they're facing two ways. They're facing their own teams, which Paul will come on to, I guess, a bit later, but they're also facing you. And that's a stress, that can be quite a stressful situation. So just make sure that you are coaching them well and advising them well. And where you can, conduct some video-based management and coaching. You can do your coaching yourself for them, but there's plenty of other things that they can find online to encourage them to be learning and using this time. Trust them to get on with it. Trust your leaders. Have regular chats with them. Make sure there are no surprises. Use tech like Zoom and Slack and some of the things that are available out there, but make sure that when you are speaking to your leaders, you are getting to know them. Use this time, bizarrely, even though you're far apart, to get to know them even better. Yeah, treat remote as local as best you can. It's the best thing you can do. And be open to discover what they're doing with their teams. You as a leader should be asking them, well, how are you managing X and what are you doing with Y? And each person will be different. And I think that's really important. And try to create for your leaders those sort of water cooler moments that you'd have in the office. You just try to do that online with them as well. Some of the companies I'm working with, they have virtual runs, and there's a leaderboard, and they're doing that with their leaders. Just the leadership team are going on runs. They'll play Kahoot, the virtual quiz. They're doing things that just engage and strengthen the leadership team, and it helps with resilience. And I guess the three summaries for me: as a leader with your leadership team, you've got to be calm, you've got to be clear, and you've got to be confident, because you want to use this time to help build your leadership team into leaders that can really help your business thrive.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. That's, excuse me, very, very useful advice. For the audience now, I'm going to ask if we put up a poll question. This poll question is a little bit out of sync to what we're talking about, but we're trying to collect data. We've done it for the last two webinars, and it's helping us with our conversations with government about making payments available quicker to the industry. So please, can you take a moment, have a look at the poll questions, and tick all the relevant areas that apply for you, please. While you do that, I'd like to ask Howard to comment further after Dave, please.
Well, I think Dave gave a very, very comprehensive answer to a very, very sort of tricky type question there. I think the things that I picked up from there to sort of really sort of try expand on was Dave's comment of reminding people of the purpose of the business. And the companies that I'm sort of working with, we always talk about the mission of the business and getting your staff, your clients to be involved in your mission and what your mission and actual purpose is. And I think in this type of situation, as Dave said, the great leaders actually push forward, but what they do is they push forward with everybody. And it's about delegating things out to your management team and not holding things just for yourself and trying to do everything for yourself. It's delegating things out to the management team so that you can create the strategy and the tactics of the business that is going to come, and they all feel part of the development of those strategy and tactics. And once they get the strategy and tactics right, it will create the rhythm of the business, and there will be a new rhythm. If you think about what's happened at the moment, the rhythm of the business has completely stopped as our client base has fallen off a cliff edge. So we have to now restart that rhythm and rechange the rhythm and make sure everything's moving forward. And so that means creating project teams, capitalizing on your strengths across your management team and ensuring you're delegating projects to the people with the right strengths, and then they're also delegating that further down to their teams as well. So again, I think Paul will comment on that later on. So I think it's a whole thing about mentoring and monitoring your leaders with you, and making sure that they are on point with the mission of the business, and you're delegating things out to them, because I think no leader should be an island at this stage. They need to take advice from their team and listen to what their team are saying, but also they need to take advice from others, so things like this webinar and sort of other mentors they can get advice from to help them develop their business. So I think, you know, a very sort of tricky question, and I think sort of Dave answered it very, very well, but to me that's the thing that I'd be looking at, is the delegation down to your sort of seconds in command, and making sure they feel part of the setting of the strategy and tactics, and relating that all back to the mission of the business.
And thank you very much, Howard. While we just get the last of the listeners to complete the poll, I've actually got a question that's come through from the audience for both Dave and Howard, and it says, the question really is looking at when we come out of this, so after lockdown, is there any differences that you would recommend between what we're doing now in lockdown and what we should keep and sustain after lockdown?
Well, the thing is, during lockdown, you will become closer to your people. You will be relying on them more. And if I were a leader, I'd be just making little notes somewhere in the margin or somewhere in a document of some of the things that you did that you were using during this lockdown period. And I would try to keep those going because that will link to what we've gone through and how you survived it and getting ready for that moment when you thrive and get going. And some of the good things, some of the cooler things that you'll have done, let's not just ditch them, but let's try to weave them into our businesses. We will have stronger businesses and hopefully more motivated people as we come out of this. People will be sick of being at home. They'll be sick of trying to get hold of candidates that aren't around. They'll be sick of trying to get hold of clients that aren't able to respond with the speed that we'd like them to, just because of the situation. And it'll be a little bit like a wound up Duracell bunny. Everybody will be raring to go. And your job will be kind of harness some of that and use some of the skills that as leaders you would have used during this period where we're all together indoors and get that out into the organization.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Howard, anything you'd like to add? Or?
Yeah, I think the way I looked at it, I think I described it partially last week, that to me this is like the lead up to a great sporting event, so like a lead up to the Olympics. So you're still going to have your day-to-day work that you're doing now, and that's going to come through. Maybe not as much as it has in the past, obviously, but you still need to be focusing on sharpening your skill set and sharpening your tool set for when that date starts and then the competition starts. And I think sort of looking at it from, you know, reading some management books and sporting books in those type of analogies, they always worked on making things better and improving things. And what you found was that the coaches and the participants would be bouncing off each other constantly as the lead up to the event is, working out what actually does work well and what doesn't work, and refining those things all the time. As Dave said, they would then keep the best things and push them through and then push beyond. And if you think about how people have developed on all sorts of different things, it's all about creative ideas coming from internal and from external, and then finding what best works for you and then adapting that and applying that. So I think as we come out of this, that your management team needs to be all aligned. They need to be absolutely all on the same page and ready to make sure that they're driving the business forward in the most positive light. And it's about capitalizing on that now. So it's about training and developing not only your management team, but your staff to be ready when they come out of that, and then carry on those things. Because the things that we discover now, as Dave said, that work really well and bring the businesses close together will be the things that take the business beyond where you want to be once business starts again.
Thank you, Howard. Those are both Dave and Howard. Those are really great insights and great advice. I think we'll close that poll question now, please. And you'll see the results that will pop up on the screen. It appears that a very high percentage of you have had to furlough staff, but an even higher percentage are chasing clients. So we will use that data as promised with our conversations with government to add weight to those conversations. So thank you very much. I think if we link to what Dave and Howard have just spoken about, there are different adjustments are there different adjustments we should be making to manage our teams? So these are particularly our top performers and even the clients. We're just leading on from the poll here over the next few weeks. So Paul, can I turn to you first for this one, please?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is keeping well and very safe at the moment. Basically, as we've been talking about, we're living through extraordinary times. So these are, as you don't need me to tell you, they're definitely not normal times. And you know, if you translate that into the way we manage our teams, we have to take the same perspective. These times call for extraordinary levels of management skills. and how we inspire our teams and how we look after our teams, we have to engage extraordinary methods. And picking up on Dave's excellent point earlier, I think once we get beyond this point, a lot of the lessons that we're going to learn going through this crisis will be enormously helpful, provide us with fantastic opportunities when we get beyond this point. So, the answer to the question is, what do we need to do differently in management? Is everything, absolutely everything. If you look at what the government are doing right now, we have these evening broadcasts. They're conveying information every single day to the nation. Communication is heightened. And during any kind of crisis, the first thing you want to do is to heighten communication. People get extremely anxious when they're kept in the dark. I mean, that would apply under normal circumstances, but it becomes even more important to keep people aware of what's going on a daily basis during these difficult times, because otherwise, especially for people who are at home, isolated on their own, they become extremely anxious, can start catastrophizing, and life becomes perhaps even more complicated and more concerning for them than should be the case. So you do need to heighten your levels of communication with your teams. Now, I believe, and certainly with my clients, I'm consistently daily on Zoom calls, Skype calls, and so forth with them. And with one of my clients, we have a morning meeting, a breakfast meeting, and we have an afternoon meeting. And I know that the owner of the business is consistently, during the course of the day, also talking to individuals that are not furloughed, but I'll come back to the distinction between employed and furloughed in just a minute. And he's talking to those people on a regular basis. And he's a very good example to us of how you should be managing your people during this time. And I think that having those morning meetings, catch-ups perhaps at lunchtime, evening follow-throughs are extremely important. And I think that what you've got to do with your teams is set them short, sharp objectives on a daily basis. And by the way, I don't think we should be giving them, and this may sound patronizing, it's not meant to, but I don't think we should be giving them complicated tasks. It's the KISS principle here. It's the keep it simple, stupid principle. Let's give them short, sharp tasks to deal with. And then we catch up lunchtime, we catch up at the end of the day, and we make sure that the inputs are being dealt with correctly. We're having to realign our targets, obviously, during these times. Things that we would normally consider to be decent performance, excellent performance, are now beyond us at this point. So what do we define now as success? What does success look like under these extraordinary circumstances? And that could be as simple as the number of candidates we connect with in a day, or the number of clients we speak to, or coming back to the point about credit control, who we spoke to in terms of getting monies in and so forth. They're short, sharp objectives. And we all know, as we're professionals, that if you focus on the inputs, the outputs take care of themselves. So decide on what looks like success at this moment in time. And to Howard's point, work on people's strengths. I mean, I think that would apply even during normal times. It's pointless pushing square pegs into round holes. You do need to make sure you're working with your people and utilizing their innate abilities, I should say, so that they are given a chance to succeed. And now is again a heightened moment. Look at their strengths, consider what they can do for the business and for themselves, what's fulfilling for them, and get them to do those things on a daily basis. So keep the objectives short, sharp, simple, and have things that for people that keep them occupied and focused. And it's very important. Bradley will talk shortly about mental well-being. It's very important to have a focus every day, to get up in the morning, to have a list of things to achieve, both individually and from a team perspective, and keep yourself in that mindset rather than listening to all the bad news that's circulating, which, by the way, an awful lot of which is simply not true and will only serve to depress people. So focus on those things. And we can do quite a bit with our candidates too. So webinars, and I think timing is important. You'll need to decide when you do these things. But CV clinics, for example, interview technique clinics, those kind of things are very helpful for people who are sitting at home right now thinking about what they want to do with their lives when this crisis passes. So I think that we will see opportunities to communicate, reach out to our candidates and use those opportunities during this time. Something that I think is extremely important here as well is that you need to be praising people consistently. We said this, Dave said use the word empathize, very important word. So empathize with people, be very, very swift to say well done, congratulations to your colleagues, even for the smallest triumph, something perhaps you wouldn't necessarily do under normal circumstances. On this occasion, you applaud them very loudly. And the opposite to that is please try not to criticize, to be difficult with people. It's hard enough at the moment for people to keep on the straight and narrow mentally. So any criticism is not really particularly appropriate at the moment. Certainly convey your thanks, convey your congratulations to people, as I said, even over the smallest issues. Remember that you're going to be remembered for the way you treat people during these times when we emerge at the other end. If you treated people well, I'm sure they'll repay that to you in terms of their hard work and their loyalty. If you treated people badly, don't be surprised to get the raw end of their views when this passes. So keep that in mind. I know you are. Look after your people, because as somebody said a moment ago, if you look after them, in due course, they will look after you. Talking about top performers, and I think for any of us that have been in the industry for any period of time, and I'm sure we've got top performers listening right now, and bless them, they can also be the people that are of highest maintenance, even during the best of times. Love them as we do, they have egos. And I think that for high performers, going through this particular situation is extremely difficult. They're used to being successful. They're used to being top dog, doing well, being praised, being top of the league table. And their egos at the moment are suffering. They're not having the opportunity to be on the top of that league table, to be outperforming others. They're beginning to doubt themselves. I think you need to remind them this situation isn't of their doing, obviously. Make sure that they are looked after, that you empathize with them, remind them how brilliant they are and how much you appreciate them, and that this will pass. Keep their morale up. They're obviously extremely important to your business. They're, in a sense, no more important than other people in your organization, but they have a need to feel that they're achieving, and this particular situation is clearly going to stunt that. So be aware of that. Be supportive towards them. I'm just picking up a point that the previous guys have made. This is the time for strong leadership. And your senior team, the people that you manage, who manage others in perhaps the medium to larger businesses, you need to make sure that you and those guys are demonstrating strength, resilience, and I'm picking up the point, good humor, because your people are looking up to you. So even though you'll be racked with worries and doubts and concerns, which is natural and normal, you cannot demonstrate that. You cannot display that. It's simply something that you can't do. You have to hold it inside. And I do think this point about being humorous is important. Keeping a sense of humor is something us Brits are really good at. And constantly talk about your longer term vision for the business. As we've been saying in previous webinars, this is the pause button. This isn't the end. In fact, I would argue very strongly, this is the beginning, because what's going to happen when we come out will be a different world of work. And for those of us that have got the opportunity, as we have right now, to stop and consider what the future should look like and have the courage to innovate as we come out, I think there'll be enormous opportunities, enormous opportunities. So I think that, yes, it's a concerning and worrying time. It's an extremely tragic period of time that we're all going through, but there will be brilliant opportunities going forward. And you and your leadership team, in terms of how you manage your people, you need to demonstrate that optimism, that upbeat attitude, that strength and resilience. Absolutely critical at this time.
Thank you, Paul. That's fascinating stuff. You mentioned at the beginning of what you were talking about engaging with clients quite a lot. So can we turn to poll question 2? Because I think that's the one that's probably the most relevant now. So this one, if the listeners can complete when it pops up. This is about social distancing continues. What opportunities for digital engagement and support are you offering to clients? So if you can complete that as you listen, please. And I know Paul's put some fantastic pointers out, but Bradley, is there anything you'd like to add to that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's safe and well. I concur with everything Paul said. I think there were some terrific points there. I want to pick up on a couple of things. He mentioned about praising people, and I think that's so important. Celebrating the small wins, whether that's finding out and qualifying a really good candidate that we know is going to be available in 6, 8, 12 weeks' time. That should be celebrated, because ultimately it's really difficult out there for so many aspects of our job. So let's recognize when we do a good piece of work, even if it doesn't relate straight away to revenue, it's all part of the process that will generate revenue in the future. And along the way, we should praise everything that we do that defines a level of success. So I think that's super important. But Paul mentioned about not criticizing people, and I totally agree with him, but I also want to add something to that. So many of you that are running and owning businesses are making some exceptionally tough decisions, whether you are keeping people on board, whether you are letting them go, whether you are furloughing them. If you have kept people on board, you have every right to make sure people are doing their jobs, even in a difficult situation that we all find ourselves in. So I'm not advocating we should be criticizing people, far from it. But equally, don't be afraid to manage. Don't be afraid to make sure people are doing what they should be doing, because now more than ever, I think as employees, everyone should have an appreciation that if you have been able to keep your job, it's because you are highly valued. It's because your company wants to progress when we come out the other end. It's because they think highly of you. So I think it's really important that you do your bit to make sure you can be as productive as you can. And it's important that managers can have those conversations without the feeling of guilt. So I just wanted to add that slant into that particular point. We talk about adjusting to manage our team's top performers and our clients, and Paul spoke about communication. Well, listening is such an important part of communication, as we all know. And when I first got into the industry many moons ago, we were taught, listen, hear what's coming back, see if there's an angle whereby you might be able to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to suggest we change tack slightly, and we now listen to understand versus listening to respond. So we can really hear what people are saying. And this also comes down to how we develop our relationships at the moment. Now there's still an opportunity to do business development, but you can't just go out asking for business as if there's nothing going on. You need to show empathy. You need to have an understanding and an interest in what's going on with your clients' businesses, and just talk to them. Now is a great opportunity to try to develop those relationships to a much deeper level. And it's about listening to what people are coming back with, hearing their concerns, whether they're personal concerns or concerns for their business. Everyone has been impacted by COVID-19. So don't be afraid to have the conversations and ask people how they're feeling, because I think it would help with the long-term relationship that you show that you care. And those that show that they care, I think will be able to build something bigger and better when we come out the other side of it. A couple of other things that spring to mind. Paul mentioned setting realistic targets and goals, and I absolutely agree with that. Long before this crisis, we've been talking for many years about KPIs being relevant and focusing on the outcome and the results. And if you can pick up a vacancy and you can do it in 2 calls as opposed to 50, why target someone to make 50 calls, for example? I now just think we need to be setting those targets, as Paul suggested, to the here and now. Focus on what you can achieve today, what you can achieve this week. We shouldn't lose sight of our overall purpose and mission, as Howard and Dave spoke about earlier on, but we do have to bring it to the here and now and try to work in a way that you can focus on what you can control versus what you can't control. And what you can control is what you're going to do today and what you're going to do tomorrow. When it comes to next month, well, let's sit down and review that then. So make sure the targets and the goals are realistic. And to try to wrap up some of what I've been saying, I mentioned it, I think, last week. It's really important for leaders to lead and managers to manage, but please be mindful of not trying to micromanage. People need the freedom to be able to do the job that they're employed to do. And if you are keeping them employed and you are encouraging them to develop business and develop relationships, give them the space to do that rather than be breathing down their necks every minute, because everyone is struggling to a degree with what's going on. It's impacting all of our lives, personally, financially, our businesses. So let's be mindful of that, but give people the space to actually do the job that they're meant to do. And they're the main things that spring to mind for that particular question, Rich.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you. If I'll just chip in with a couple of points, if I may, actually, as well. Leadership can sometimes, particularly strong leadership, where you're not trying to display any concerns, it can often lead to a feeling of loneliness, and it can be a really tough place out there at the top of a business, and not knowing who you may trust people implicitly, but if you're not going to share that pain and that concern. So I would like, reach out to each other, put some of this competition to one side for a moment and just support each other peer to peer. Reach out to, I know every single speaker that we've had on these webinars, they will always give up some of their time to have a chat with you. If you're feeling the pressure, then reach out, and there's a great network out there. I'm really proud of our industry, and I'm really proud of the people within it, and I know that we will rise to the challenge. Second thing I would just say as well is, I know I'm having to make promises to my team to keep things going, and I am absolutely adamant that I've written down every single promise I've made, and when this crisis is over, I will be 100% ticking them off to make sure that they're all met, because I can build up all of this trust with my team, and it can go in a flash if we just don't fulfill the promises that we've made. So those are my two little bits. I'd like to change the tack slightly, if I may. We've had one or two people that have been that are on listening now, that are consultants rather than managers or leaders. So could we start thinking a little bit more about the individual? So it's for everybody, really. And everybody's adjusting to the rapid changes and remote working, and how it's affecting our mental well-being, and how we can protect ourselves and support others. And I've got a specific question from the audience before I turn to our first speaker on this one, which is about how can they engage with particularly furloughed workers who are off at the moment. While I turn to this person, can we close the poll that we had open? And I'll come back to that. Leave that poll answer up, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But firstly, so let me turn to Bradley for this one, please.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks, Rich. Mental well-being is probably never been more important than it is now at the moment. Working from home, as we are all having to do, and I stress having to do, is going to have an increased likelihood of challenges to both our physical and our mental well-being. So looking after ourselves is vital, and looking after your teams as well is so vital. But to the point of your last question there, Rich, whether you're a consultant or a CEO, we have a responsibility to ourselves to make sure we are in our best health and do what we can to look after ourselves, because it's almost impossible to help others if we don't look after ourselves in the first place. And I think we all have our own responsibility for that. I think it's important from a leadership viewpoint that we are mindful and there to support the team, but across the board, no matter your position within the company, looking after your own mental well-being and recognizing when you need help and being able to put your hand up and ask for that help is so vital. Rich, you mentioned loneliness. Ultimately, it's one of the biggest issues that creates depression. And I think now that we are all working at home, we have to remember that social distancing is not necessarily social isolation. And therefore, to be able to deal with loneliness, not only engaging with clients, candidates, and doing the job of work that we do, but taking time out to engage with friends, family, so you've got that social connection, is really positive for your mental well-being. I do a lot of work with business owners and business leaders to talk about their feelings, and I think sometimes there's a bit of an ego that says we don't have to talk about how we feel, but the amount of people, regardless of level within a business, that are struggling in silence to their own detriment is frightening, and there is nothing wrong in being able to shout and ask for help, because at this moment in time, we are all experiencing something very strange. Everything that we're all going through is happening to our neighbours, to our colleagues, to our friends, to our families, and we're all in this together. And what impacts one person doesn't necessarily impact the other person. So if you are struggling, reach out, because one, you won't be alone, but if someone is handling it better than you, they might be able to give you some guidance and help as to how they're getting through things. I think in order to be able to impact our mental well-being in a positive way, there are a few things that we can do, though, and I think it might have been Howard earlier on that touched on it in terms of routine. Having a routine is so important in the current climate. Being able to get up at a normal time, get dressed, so you're working rather than in your pajamas, as it were, and having a set structure, going back to what Paul and I mentioned a little while ago about your daily targets, your KPIs, your goals, however you want to frame that up, that just gives you a sense of achievement as well. I think it's really important to recognize that we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. My sense is that many have adapted really well to this new way of living at the moment, bearing in mind it's all been forced upon us over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I think we need to give ourselves some credit for that and pat ourselves on the back and recognize that this is not easy. Having our general freedom being taken away is really difficult. And the fact that so many of us are being as productive as we are and trying as hard as we can to be able to generate business and just engage in our businesses is something that I think we should all give ourselves some credit for. But to that point as well, there's one thing that does concern me at the moment, just generally out there, and that's people burning out at the moment. I think one thing I am seeing is that the days are all mixing into one, and Monday looks like Tuesday, which looks like Saturday, which looks like Wednesday, and we're not stopping working. Well, many of us aren't. And we've got our laptops on our desk first thing in the morning, and before we know it, it's the evening, and we haven't stopped working. And I think we need to be really mindful of that, and we need to take a step back and actually recognize that sometimes less is more. It's okay not to be working 12-hour days. You can relax a little bit, give yourself the freedom to be able to walk away from work, come back to it, go and get some exercise, re-energize. Don't sit there if you're not focused. Don't force it. Because if you start trying to force what you're doing, I fear that you might end up then getting your mind running away with you, possibly in a negative way. You need to be able to give yourself a positive distraction, whether that's your daily exercise, whether that's your trip to the shops, whether that's engaging with friends or family. But if it's not going for you at that moment in time during the day, stop, come back to it. Because at the end of the day, if you've got your goals and your targets, your KPIs, as long as you can achieve them, how you go about it is very much dependent on how you best work as an individual. And I think that's something that we should be super conscious of as well. And at those times when we're feeling like we are struggling, maybe we just need to ground ourselves a little bit and start thinking about some breathing techniques just to be able to center ourselves. One thing I do is I stick my hands on my lap and I breathe in through my nose for 7 and out through my mouth for 11. 2 minutes of that, your shoulders feel relaxed, and all of a sudden your mind is clear again. Now, it isn't as simple as that. There's so many things that will be worrying so many people, but take the time to look after yourselves. it isn't about working 12-hour days to justify that you're working hard. You might be able to achieve more in doing less. Take the time to go and stimulate your mind. If you look at the Open University, they're doing so many free courses at the moment. Add that into your day. Maybe you can just challenge yourself to learn for an hour or day, whether it's recruitment skills, whether it's just general business skills, whether it's something completely random. But ultimately, if it challenges your mind and keeps your mind active in a positive way, that's all going to help your mental well-being. And I think the other thing that I did a post a few weeks ago on LinkedIn about gratitude. Now, it's really tough at the moment for many of us. Yeah, we're worried about our friends and our family from a health viewpoint. There's business issues or financial issues for many out there. But there's also many things to be thankful for. Really small things. And we spoke earlier on about celebrating some of the successes. But be thankful for those that you're close with, and just take the time to recognize that by showing a little bit of gratitude, sometimes it can put things into perspective. And again, that has a positive impact on your mental well-being. But more importantly than anything else is just talk to people. Yeah. Never be afraid to pick up the phone. To Richard's point earlier on, myself and I'm sure everyone else on here would be more than happy to have a conversation, chat with anyone that feels it would be relevant, because it's really important that we come together and we help each other through this, because as we go through this and come out the other side, as individuals, as businesses, as an industry, we'll be stronger if we look after ourselves, both physically and mentally.
Great, thanks, Bradley. I'm going to turn to Paul in a moment. I've got a specific question that I'd like him to address for us from the audience, but I've left this poll question up for you just to look at the results. A couple of things that I want to, so the social media campaigns, I think one of the things about where we are at the moment, that is going to be there for some time, but also the online information hubs is the way that people are supporting. Please go and have a look at the REC COVID-19 hub. We've made a lot of information, if not all of it, on there available to everybody. So you don't have to be a member to go and check the information out. And if it's useful, use it and share it, please. So that there's a mine of information in there. So a mine of information in there. Right, if we can come off that poll question, please. Paul, let me just ask a specific question. We were talking in the leadership piece earlier on about how we are looking after our top billers, our key people within our organisation. But then we've got the possibility that some of those people we have furloughed may feel that they're not key, but we still want to engage with them. Have you got any advice on the kind of messaging that we might put around that and linking it to Bradley's mental well-being piece, please?
Sure, Richard. Absolutely. So, I mean, the legal position, as you guys will be aware with furloughing, is that they're still absolutely your people. On the bench, as we've been saying, they will come back to you once this passes, back on your full-time payroll again, and they have continuity of service with you. So it's a technicality at the moment. They are at home, they're not allowed to work, as you're well aware, but that does not mean that we fail to talk to them. They're at least as important to us as the people that are presently still on payroll and working for the business. And in my opinion, you need to be calling and speaking with those furloughed staff on a regular basis during the week. Now, I think that having them attend business calls, so your business Zooms and your business Skype calls and so forth, is probably not necessarily appropriate because they're not supposed to be working. Having said that, they can be invited to listen if they wish to. There's no problem with that. I think that you certainly need at least once a week, probably a couple of times a week, to have a company Zoom of some sort. Now, I think that's a mixture of current information. I said earlier that heightened communication is vital at this moment. So I think it's company information, pumping out as leaders positive information, keeping people informed. All of those things are critical. Letting them know, the furloughed guys, the good news that's been coming out, the placements we've managed to make, the contractors we've managed to place, the successes and triumphs we've had. Let's share that good news, because I think that enables people to understand the business is still functioning, it's still gaining business, it's still succeeding, and I think that feeds into their mental well-being, gives them a sense of prolonged security. I think as well with furloughed staff, and of course with existing people working in the business now, socializing. Dave talked about the water cooler moment. I think that's extremely important, and it links back to Bradley's point, and Brad made some outstanding points about how important it is to keep people in a positive place, and I think that having some fun with those guys is really important. One of my clients later today at 4 o'clock are having beers. It would normally be Friday, but it's going to be Thursday for obvious reasons. And they're having, and I'm going to spell the word because I'm a nice guy, but they're having an SHIT shirt moment this afternoon. People have to turn up in their worst looking shirts, which I think in my case I've probably got on right now. But I think those kind of fun, enjoyable, silly things are really important. And I think as leaders, you need to be at times strong and very forward thinking, but other times you can afford to let the mask slip and be the circus clown. There's really nothing wrong with that. So I think it's important to get people involved, whether they're furloughed or not. But let's remember, furloughed staff have not gone away, they're coming back, and we must take care of them, look after them. My final point on this is that individual phone calls to those guys during the week are very important. Please just pick up the phone or Skype them and talk to them. They're not working, but they need to know what's going on, and they need your attention and focus. So I think that's vitally important too, especially if they're on their own at home. I think it's even more important if they have nobody around them to meet, to talk to discuss. And it's not just elderly people who are on their own at home. There are lots of younger people who live in bedsits and so forth that need some company and need some help. So you know who those guys are. You know who the most vulnerable people are in your business. Please be mindful of that. Perhaps look at a buddy system within your business too. Maybe quite easily get other people in your company to reach out and talk to others in the organization. Link people together. Allow them to make their own plans as to how often they talk to each other. But I'm picking up a point here from Bradley. I think going forward, this is a wonderful opportunity, believe it or not. Exceptional circumstances like these provoke major life changes, and we have an opportunity once this moves on to reflect on what this moment has taught us. And I'm looking out the window right now, and maybe it's my imagination, but the sky seems bluer, the air seems and looks cleaner, it smells cleaner. And I think that whilst this is a catastrophic situation we're experiencing, each of us can see the positives if you look outside and you consider also the attitudes of most people to each other, that socialization, the helping hands we're seeing all over the place. There's some good stuff coming out of this. And what I really hope when we emerge from this is that society and maybe human beings per se take a good strong look at what's happened and the way we've been conducting our lives up to this moment and the way we've been destroying the planet between us. Maybe this is a pause button that enables us, once we move from this position, to actually reevaluate what good life is really about and what we should be doing to look after each other and what we should be doing to look after the planet. So perhaps there's some very big positives to come out of this as we go forward, taking care of each other, realizing that the simple things in life are extremely important. And that's the opportunity we have today. And the point about Bradley made is, let's be kind to each other. Let's look after one another, especially the people we live with. Give them space, be understanding, be kind to yourself, which was what Bradley was talking about. Don't be too tough on yourself. Take the time out to breathe the air and enjoy the moment. Go and do stuff that you've never done before. Like learn to play the saxophone. Go and write the book that you always said you were going to write. Or maybe that's what I would like to do. What else would you like to do? Take those opportunities.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. The image of you playing a saxophone is now ingrained in my brain. So I'd like to turn to our next poll question, which is really about how are organisations engaging with their employees and the mental health of those employees. So if you can continue with that, please, and answer that and choose all that apply as we go along. But we've covered quite a lot of mental well-being and mental health, and very conscious of our time. We're slightly overrunning, but before we finish off, I really want to look at the physical health and physical well-being as well. So what should or can we be doing with our own physical health? On this question, let me turn to Howard, please, for the first response.
I think it's a very, very sort of interesting point, that listening to what Paul, Dave and Brad have all said about building bigger businesses, building better businesses and being mentally fit for purpose, you also need to be absolutely physically fit for purpose. And I think it was Brad saying what you control and what you can't control is really important. So don't worry about what you can't control, it's what you can control. And one thing that you can control is your physical well-being and how that works. And I think sort of working from home has changed quite a lot. It's not as easy as it's sort of made out to be, because after all, we're all sort of creatures of habits. And now we're all creatures of habits trapped between four walls. So we're almost like a prisoner to a certain degree. So our normal routine has absolutely been decimated from what it was, because we are creatures of habit. And what I mean by that routine, you'd wake up on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'd get ready for work, you'd commute to work, you'd work, have a chat, have a conversation with people at work, you'd then have lunch, then back to work, having a chat with your people, then commute home and either do your hobby, etc., and what goes on. Well, all that's disappeared, because as Brad was saying, you know, Friday looks like Tuesday, which looks like Saturday, which looks like Sunday. So all our days have actually started to blend together. So it's important that we start to do those things, because usually what would happen at the end of the week, as Paul said today, you know, people will have beers on a Thursday, beers on a Friday, and the weekend comes, you've got time to recharge that weekend. So you've got to start to do things now that refresh. The good mental health and good physical health is absolutely combined together. Obviously, physical health will reduce obvious things like sick days, but it will also help productivity. The healthier your workforce, the more productive they become. And because with changing things at home, we've got to be careful not to become sedentary. It's very easy, as Brad said, to sit there, and I've done this exactly the same thing, sit there at 7 o'clock in the morning and all of a sudden it's 7 o'clock at night. I've not moved out of my chair, I've not had anything to eat, I've just been working manically and not really sort of understood what's going on around me from a physical point of view. Now, in my past life, I was a semi-pro rugby player, I'm a qualified fitness instructor, I'm a qualified martial arts instructor. So you could say that, you know, staying healthy is something that I've sort of done all my life. But when I started to work from home, I found that I had to be so much more self-disciplined to not lose the battle with the fridge and not lose the battle with the TV and not lose the battle of becoming sedentary and not actually looking after my physical health. And this is something that we can do with all our staff, whether they're employed staff or whether they're furloughed staff, because this isn't about work, this is about their physical well-being. So the first thing I want to look at is your staff that's working from home now. Obviously, all employees have got to, or employers, sorry, have got a duty of care to the health and safety and well-being of all employees, whether they're working at home or whether they're working in the workplace. Now, obviously, you'll have a work-at-home policy, and if you haven't, I suggest you get one, but you'll have a policy in your contract about looking after the people at work. And so there's a legal obligation to assess the risk of those who use display screen equipment, so the DSE, such as computers, laptops, etc. And where you identify a risk, you must actually put a measure in place to reduce that risk. And law says that if you've got 5 people or more within a business, then you need to do a DSE assessment every year and have that assessment on file. Otherwise, there's a potential if an employee comes off and says, I've got a bad back, I've got a bad neck, or whatever it be, from DSE, then you could be sued. but also there's been lots of case law of people with just one two-man people companies suing other people for the same thing. So I think it goes across everybody. So you need to really assess the workstations at home, and what that means is covering the screen height, the desk, the chair, to stop neck issues and back issues such as scoliosis. Now, if you think one of the biggest I'll go through the 5 biggest reasons why people are off work, but one of them is all about a bad back. And if you think a poor position at work, where you'll sit there with a laptop on your desk or on your knee, you're looking down at a laptop rather than a screen at eyesight, it will cause things such as cervical curve in your neck, thoracic curve, the classic hunchback comes into there. Then you've got your lower lumbar back, or your lower back pains, and your pelvic curve. All these things are caused by the height of your screens and your chair position. So you've got to think, as an employer, you should be looking after that. Now, obviously, through social distancing, and I really don't like the word social distancing, because I think it means that from social is keeping away from each other. It should be physical distancing that we're actually doing, and we should be socially getting more and more together. So I'd like to sort of try and change that if we could from there, but obviously that's what's now worldwide. But I think physical distancing is a far better view of it. But as an employer, what we can do now, we can't actually go and visit our staff in home. But what you can do, you can send them guidelines of what they should be putting into place to make sure you're covering yourself at that. Because the 5 most common reasons for people being off sick are acute medical conditions, musculoskeletal injuries, which is caused by bad posture and bad positions, stress and mental illness, which Brad's talked about, and back pain. You obviously want your team fit and healthy when the market starts to move again. You don't want people being off sick and long-term sick. And as we are creatures of habit, we've got to change the habits now, because we're creating habits now that are different to what they were 3 weeks ago, that have an absolute impact on your life. And I think Darwin summed it up the best. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor is it the most intelligent that survive. It's the ones that are the most adaptable. He didn't actually say anything about the fittest. He said the ones that are most adaptable. If you think about Japanese culture, Nissan, for a primary one, every morning, all their staff do some form of physical workout and some form of get together as a workout. So we need to create new routines that do that and help create physical as well as mental well-being. And I think as leaders, we need to be driving this. And so that's, instead of thinking about that commute to work, are we telling our staff, rather than sort of trying to start at 7 o'clock in the morning, you'd normally get up at 7 o'clock, shower, and then go to work, or go to the gym and then go to work. Think about trying to tell people you should be doing some form of exercise, and that could be anything from walking the dog, to doing an actual workout somewhere. But we need to start to put that into our daily routine. Otherwise, it will just start to get forgotten about. You think about when people get to work, they actually spend a lot of time moving around work and walking around, talking to people within work. Look at all those sales consultants, which Paul talked about, the best sales consultant. I can guarantee a large percentage of those people will be stood up on the phone, walking around the office, closing, because the nervous energy that they're burning off. But that's all physical exercise. You think about how we talk to each other at work, that cooler water moment. They are bits where your brain is switching off and you're talking about something else, something that's probably not about work, etc. So you've got to start taking breaks, and that means a break every sort of an hour for 5 minutes. But you could walk up and down your stairs. You could go for a walk in your garden. There's lots of things online about how to stretch at work in your seat, which again will start to regenerate the body and look at what's going on within your body and help your body to actually adapt to what's going on and stop it becoming sedentary. So we need to think about keeping the morale of the team high. And there's lots of things that there's a poll there going on saying, should we circulate information about exercise and promoting well-being? Well, yes, we actually should be. But what we should be doing is making that fun, making it part of a part of the actual daily routine. But rather than doing one type of thing, we should be doing lots of different types of exercises, which then covers all your people within the business to make sure you're catering for everybody, but make it fun. And those things then create team morale. The other thing that we do, because of the herd mentality, lunch is always between 12 and 2. But when you're working at home, there seems to be no idea when lunch actually starts and finishes because you're just working. Normally, lots of people take lunch. So I would be saying you must have lunch. Take a lunch break and do something that actually breaks off. And as Paul was saying, there's an opportunity then to call your family, call your friends and check in on them and find out what they're doing. Call your other colleagues, find out what they're doing. It's an opportunity to regenerate yourself and working from there. And the other thing I'd also say is you need to set a finish time. Have a genuine finish time where you stop and think about substituting then the commute from home, where you'd either be commuting home or commuting to something to do, a hobby, a gym, or whatever it be that you do, you know, and do something in that time. Now, whether that's from a corporate point of view, you could do a Thursday beer, Friday beer, you could do something along those lines to get that. But what it is about, it's not about leaving work and going straight down and sitting and watching the television, because the television is one of the biggest causes of anxiety and stress. So exercising actually stimulates the body by releasing proteins and endorphins, and it improves your physical structure and the function of your brain. So strengthening your body in that way is important. So daily exercise, walking, running, stretching is all part of exercise. Let's get that into our mind, because we've all heard everybody coming to work and say, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do this. You've now got an opportunity to truly do that. So you've got to live to sort of create a community that will help that. And I think as a responsible boss, it's your opportunity to do that. And if you think about what exercise can actually do and what it brings weight management, which is the most poignant benefit of exercise, as it helps weight management. We all talk about this time of year getting beach ready or something like that for a holiday or something like that. I've got to lose weight for the summer. Well, now's an opportunity to do that, okay? You need to keep people away from the fridge because it's so easy to go to the fridge and just snack, which again is not particularly good for your health. But obviously, being fit and healthy relieves physical pain, it protects you against a health condition, it's healthy for your skin, it boosts mental health, but it also increases energy levels. But what it also does, which I think is absolutely critical at this day and age, or in this time at this moment, is it actually improves the mood of people. Because I can imagine now how many people are having arguments at home, or people who are sat there working at home and they're on their own and they're having no outside contact. Improving their mood is really, really important. And all these things we can be doing and incorporating into our work and making it the new norm rather than before, because now we're looking after our staff's mental well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, and it goes on, and we can create a new world and a new structure which is great for employee attraction, great for employee retention, and it's all about creating the challenges of the business. Because when we start to get back, you want your consultants fit and ready. As a leader, you need to be fit for purpose and moving forward. So they're the things, Richard, I would look at, and what I'd be doing as a manager now to try and keep my staff motivated and morale high, and keep them physically and mentally fit.
Thank you very much, Howard. That's a really fascinating physical fitness affects mental fitness and keeps us all working. We've got one more poll question which I'd like us to go to, and this is a final one. It's about your feeling about whether the economy will bounce back. And while you complete that, I'd like to turn to Dave to add comments around physical well-being, please.
Yeah, given the time, I'll just go through things. I'm fortunate outside of the recruitment industry to be chair of a company we created called Create PT, and its job is to create personal trainers and then place them into gyms. So I'm a bit like Howard. I've got a passion for sort of personal physical fitness. So a few tips and then I'll leave you. If you've got a pet or you've got kids, the one thing they desire of you is more time. Well, this is your chance to give them more time. Give them the time that they've always wanted and play with them more and get out with them more, even in the garden. Make your stairs, if you've got stairs in your house, make them your best friend. Run up and down the stairs or walk up and down the stairs or do some exercises on the stairs. Use your own body weight, you know, press ups and sit ups and push ups and things like that. A lot of people I know in the recruitment industry, fitness is what drives them. They're keen to be fit so they can they can keep leading their businesses. But there's things that you can do at home which is really important. There's a lot of tech out there that you can use on your screen. If you're into boxing, there's things like Box VR. If you can gamify your indoor training. If you've ever come across a piece of tech called Zwift, which is ZWIFT, it's actually a fantastic tool to gamify some of the training that you do. And plenty of gyms have set up online things that you can look at, different exercises that you can do at home. Key things: have a good diet, which I know is difficult when you can be locked at home. Have alcohol-free days. That's really important because that helps with your better mental health. And I guess the final one for me, and one of the most important things in terms of physical fitness, is try to get a good night's sleep. As the days blend into the nights and they go on and on, just try to get a good night's sleep. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Dave. That's fascinating stuff. I think we need to close that last poll. Ordinarily, I would go back around all the speakers and ask everybody to give a summing up message. But I think on this occasion, because we've overrun by time, we will do it in the follow-up email. So please look out for that follow-up email. There is just one very, very specific question that I want to answer before we sign off. And it's for Zainab. I've checked you are still on, so that's useful. You've asked a specific question around can furlough workers can top up their wages. Zainab, the answer to that, there's two sides to this question. So if you as an employer wish to top up furloughed workers' salaries, you may. Or if a furloughed worker wishes to go and get another job, not within your business, they may do that. There is specific guidance around both of those. So I'm not sure which question it is, but there's specific guidance around both of those areas. Please go to the REC website, COVID-19 Hub, and those questions will be answered in that information. If you cannot find the information, please contact the REC and we will be able to help you. Hopefully that's answered those. Now, the rest of it, I'd like to thank all the listeners for staying with us. We did overrun, but the vast majority of you have stayed. I think we've answered most questions. Those that we haven't answered, we will get to in the email that will come out either this afternoon or tomorrow. And I would really like to offer a personal thanks to all of our speakers today because their insights into managing in these times from a remote perspective, the cybersecurity, leadership, and our own well-being, both mental and physical, has been fascinating. So thank you very, very much. Cheerio all, and that's this webinar over.